Good afternoon. So we are talking about new battlefields. I want to talk about new opportunities. Eric Schmidt said in his opening, you have that company Cisco, which is around for 30 years now, based on open standards. So will we be around in the next 30 years? What will be the market? What will be the opportunities? And that's my topic for you for the next 15 minutes. We look at the world from a segmentation point of view in 3 buckets. We talk about aging, shrinking, and hyper-growth parts of the world. Think about it. In the US, we are aging. In the next 50 years, the percentage of people of 65 and older will increase from 7% to almost 20%. And I'm part of it. This is a young crowd, I think. So next to that, if you look at specifically Europe, countries are not just aging from a population point of view, but also shrinking. If you look at Germany, that the average population, 65 and older, will be 30%, and there is a net reduction. To maintain standard of living, that will mean a productivity increasement needed of 4 to 5% on a yearly basis. And then we have the other side of the world, India, the Middle East, Indonesia, Africa, and you see hypergrowth. The world is increasing from 6 billion people to 9.2. India alone is increasing by 500 million people. I live in India since 3 years, not because of cost and labor arbitrage, but to see, and I heard the word this afternoon a couple of times, and to see what the unmet needs are, and what are the new opportunities, what are the new services, how can we expand global business and bring people from poverty in an industrial cycle. So 4 mega trends that will create opportunities and challenges. But the opportunities is what I focus on. So on one hand, like I said, the developed countries' labor forces are substantially aging and declining. By 2020, 1 out of every 4 workers will live in India. It's a given, it's a demography. Population growth is in emerging countries. At 60 to 80% of all new people will live in that part of the world. The economic power is shifting. GDP growth, we all know that, and after the recent recession, even more. And the world's population becomes urbanized. It increases from 50 to 60%. Let me give you some drivers and numbers, because these numbers are astonishing. If you really think about it, and you think about opportunities, 700 million people will be urbanized in the next decade. That is 180,000 people a day who move from rural areas to cities. And then we talk about all kinds of web services. How do you just register them? And how will you give them access to utilities? How will you provision that? 1.5 billion people still live off $2 a day. People have no access to water or electricity. And now you see a remarkable phenomenon that we have never seen in history before. A lot of these people will have access to ICT, and specifically mobile phones, before they have access to water or electricity. Think about new economic patterns that are starting. Microfinancing that is done in small villages, where mostly female take those loans. And they start a small business with that. New economic patterns we have never. So don't study the past, imagine what the future will be. How will we give these people entrance to education and to healthcare? Because to really create a sustainable world, if we don't create jobs, we will be a touristic place forever. 75% of the world's energy is used in cities. 75%. And 40% out of that 75% is in buildings. And buildings only have a utility of utilization of 40%. And so if we talk about green, where can we start? And how do we create a sustainable world if we know that energy demand is doubling by 2030? So here is the thing. And this is the thought I want to plant in your head and think with me. And that's so far on the computing, and whatever we have done with Web 2.0 is about computing, is about what we call ICT. Over the last 30 years, we came a long way. But now we also start looking at adding devices. Everything will be connected, 1 trillion devices. And this is great for our engineers. They think about new routing protocols, because routing protocols have been built to get packages from A to B in the fastest way, not in the most energy efficient way, not in a way that you can easily install it or auto-detect it. And so from a technology point of view, it's a great opportunity and a big challenge. How will that look? And basically what it can do, it will enable all kinds of new productivity, the Internet of Things, and it can create new services. You know, just to be a little bit controversial, on the top right, I have a toilet. Can you imagine, and would you pay $10 a month if you would go to the loo in the morning and you would get a nutrition advice? If you talk about healthcare? Hey, you get it. Took about. So the Internet of Things, think about it, that everything will be connected. So far, we have just focused on collaboration, video, virtualization. That's what Web 2.0 is all about. And that video is the new voice. Collaboration, ERP systems, virtualization. We are just scratching the surface. If you would add the Internet of Things and you see the network as an open platform, what can you build on top of that? And let's dream a little bit together. This is a picture of a city in Korea where we had the G20 last week. The G20, the B20, Songdo, except for that big tower, it's all there. It's built. And what we're doing now is that we're creating the Internet of Things. We connect everything in that city, and we are basically running a community, a city, a country on networked information. All utilities will run on the same platform. Look around you in a building like here, we at least have 7 networks. There are no standards. It's all proprietary. If you would run all utilities on a common platform, energy management, water, gas, utilities in general, but also real estate, energy management, energy efficiency. You know, if we could reduce energy here in a year by at least 30–40%. By create visibility, create dashboard, Web 2.0 services, sports and entertainment, healthcare. So take that idea of one common infrastructure, then you can talk about sustainability, economically, socially, and environmental. And because you can live in a nice, clean place, but if you have no job, it's not that relevant. If it's not secure, if it's not a safe place, you don't want to live there. So political leaders, mayors, government leaders, adapt that agenda of sustainability. And you have parts of the world like in Australia where between Brisbane, Melbourne and Sydney, people are competing for young people. The imbalance, the world will be so unbalanced. So technology is probably the only way out to address that. And we call it in Cisco smart connected communities. And let me give you a couple of examples. Relevance to cities, communities and countries. One common infrastructure, one back office where you can manage all utilities. In China alone, 100 cities are built of 1 million people and more. And we envision that in places like India, there is a need of at least 200 cities in the next 50 years. So if you build them from the ground up, you can build them based on technology. One common infrastructure. Artificial lakes for energy accumulation. And citizens will not buy technology, they will just consume services. And like we're already used to on cell phones. But with virtualization like telepresence, in Songdo, in that city I just showed you, people will get electricity, water and ICT in their apartments. And they will connect appliances. And so there's a dashboard over there, but think about public services. If you want to renew your driving license, you have to queue up at the DMV. It's not fun, take you a couple of hours. You can do this from home. You can do this virtually. You can do an eye test, and you can apply. You get it sent home. Services from an energy management point of view, visibility at home. If my kids would have visibility when they leave my house, what is still burning, or what is still up and running, you save 10%. So dashboards. Services from an SMB point of view, marketplace. We don't know yet what type of services are possible. And we know that on cell phone, the average revenue per user in the US is $60. In cities, And cities, and think about cities like Seoul, 18 million people, the Chongqing in China, 37. These are ecosystems in itself, and where there is a big unmet need for public services, for safety and security, and then, of course, for all kinds of marketplace services. And so if we talk about Web 2.0, perhaps we should talk about Web 3.0. What are the benefits? And what will this do? What will this whole Internet of Things do? Except generating business and making things possible. And these are data points out of city plans. Not something we are dreaming up here, but real data. Energy savings of 15% and more in most plans for 2020 of cities who have that vision and who embrace technology and services as a key enabler. Traffic reduction, 20%. We can't build roads forever. And that you don't commute to compute. Smart working centers in Amsterdam. 80% of visits with doctors don't need physical interaction. And we call it social virtualization. Instead of going somewhere, go only to friends, have dinner, come to conferences. And we are social animals, but there are a lot of things that we could do remotely. Sydney has a plan to reduce water consumption, technology-enabled, by 80%. Crime rates, because people feel more safe, go down automatically. And then in the rural worlds, there is really something, and we call it social virtualization. In India, we have 600,000 villages. 40% have no teachers or doctors, and they will never get that. So what you start seeing is virtual education. And education that, in English, can be provided from everywhere on the world. In Korea, private tutoring is a big market, and you can Google it. The best paid tutor at the moment earns $5 million a year. So you open up all kinds of new markets, even in rural areas, where you can think about services that you can offer. And you will meet price points because of volume, and of course, have it running in the cloud and share the whole sharing costs. You will meet price points of $1 per student per month in virtual education. And in virtual healthcare, you can achieve $1 per doctor visits. Think about it. Think about it, how real that is. What will it take to build this industry? Of course, first, it's the creation of a new industry. It will create and it will need global open standards. It is like the internet 30 years ago. You remember AppleNet, DECnet, 80 protocols. In building automation, it's the same. In power grids, we can't even standardize on the plug worldwide. And we have 110 volts too. But if we have that industry initiative and we embrace this, we need smart regulation. And that's why don't we have a platinum LEED requirement for all new buildings? Why do we have fire regulations in the building and not about energy management? And so smart regulation, the policies around security, the policies about privacy, public-private partnerships, and not last but not least, new ecosystems. Companies that have to work together to embrace this whole new thought and market of the Internet of Things. The addressable market in 30 years will be bigger than what we have achieved so far. So I want to leave you with a personal note to close and to wrap up. And then, you have to dream a little bit with me. When I tell my story to my kids, to my customers, I always say, I was born in the Netherlands on a small island. And I was 14 years before we had television at home. I was 20 years old before I had my first plane ride. I was 30 years old with my first cell phone. My son is 10. He wants to have a cell phone, of course. And then he had the deadly question, Dad, but how old were you? And he lost the debate, of course. But it's not about how old I am, but it's just, if you think about it, that 40 years the first VPN, 50 years the first TP. We are the bottlenecks. Awfully people of my generation, because we argue, we talk, we don't dream enough. If you put children in a telepresence room, they look not at the technology. They just start playing and they use it. So if we build new cities, if we revitalize cities around the world, we have to think out of the box. We have to embrace these concepts and build these industries. Thank you.
Thank you very much.